Thank you, Keith, and thanks to Brand Innovators for hosting today. Great to chat with you, Michelle. I guess to kick things off really quickly in terms of my background, I've been in various media, sports marketing, and tech business development roles over the course of my career. I joined Blis a little over 5 years ago to help launch the brand and the business in the US. Blis is actually based in London. We're the leading location-powered programmatic advertising partner. And we take a privacy-first approach, delivering accurate targeting at scale without the reliance on personal data. And this helps the world's largest brands and media agencies drive key business outcomes through personalized, high-performing digital advertising. So I know Keith did a little intro, but let me pass it over to you, Michelle, to add anything in terms of your introduction, that we can get this party started.
Sounds great. Thank you all for having me here, Gil. It's great to be able to do this with you, and I'm really excited to be at another Brand Innovators event. I always find the content, I learn a lot, so it's great to be part of it this time.
Awesome. Well, I guess, Michelle, to start, tell us a little bit about Blink Fitness, your brand, and a little bit about your core customer.
Yeah, for sure. So Blink Fitness has been around since 2008. We're a national fitness brand in states across the United States, and we're in the process, obviously, like a lot of industries, we were hit very hard by the pandemic. I think sometimes I have a lot of empathy also for the restaurant industry, certainly the closures and then the reopening process, et cetera. So we are now fully open across the United States. All of our gyms are back open, but we've definitely been on a journey since the beginning, since this all began.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly we've been through a tough stretch these past 18 months with the pandemic, impacting just about every industry, but certainly gyms, especially hard hit. Can you tell us a little bit about how you've pivoted as a company, and specifically how your media strategy has changed over the past several months due to the pandemic, due to gym closures, and how you've reacted to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think if anything, it's all shown us, the ability, how agile we can be and how quickly we can pivot from a strategy we sort of came in doing and then the pandemic. And so I think it was really that pivot that took place. Our member community, as well as our employees. So the first thing that we did was to ensure that we had the tools and the capabilities to do that. Thankfully, actually, the year before, we had launched an app. So from a content perspective, that became a really important vehicle. And it's actually the way that the app was designed, it actually has 3 prongs. It has the services, all about the exercise instruction and different options there, but it also actually has nutritional information as well as rejuvenation. So in the sense of meditation, yoga, etc. So I think making that available to not only our member base, but actually to everybody, anybody that was interested in downloading the app during that time period actually could and had free access to it during the pandemic, during the closure of our gyms. So that was a very big pivot from sort of when I originally got there in year 1. I arrived at the end of fall in September 2019, or the beginning of fall, I guess. And we were on a growth trajectory. We had opened actually 26 gyms in that first year that I had arrived there. So we were really focusing on spreading our wings, getting the word out, and really, to your point about media, really building top of funnel and that media awareness. So thinking both sort of at a local level, whether it was direct mail, geo-targeting, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, as well as just building out that brand story. So it was a big pivot. Obviously, with closing, we weren't focused on acquisitions. We were focused on engagement. So by creating live content, actually within those first 72 hours of being closed, we partnered with our personal trainers and began doing live stream every day and focusing that on Facebook and allowing anybody to get access. All of those, we did over 100 of those during closure, and they're all part of the app now, included sort of in the curriculum of the app. But that was definitely a big pivot from where we were to where we are right now.
And how did you find, I mean, I assume, in all the messaging, you're obviously promoting the app download. How did you find adoption of members downloading that app?
Yeah, I think we're in, the low 80s right now as far as our member base downloading that app. So the app sort of as a future tool has become, an important part or an important vehicle. Certainly as we reopened, we actually launched 4 new products on the app in time for the reopening of the gyms across the country. So we recognized an important thing, as I'm sure Keith has touched on, in going back to the gym. We wanted people to feel safe and comfortable and understand our cleaning protocols and what it means to be back in the gym. So we actually launched a contactless entry as part of the app. Away at the time, we also had, you could see how busy the gym was. You could also book time in the gym, and then on gym through all of the media channels. We began to really push on TikTok, also became a really important channel for us during that time.
Yeah, I imagine social media and obviously sharing among members was pretty important in getting that out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I think brands have really craved over the course of the pandemic, given all the changes and the disruption, is insights on these kind of changing consumer behavior patterns based on foot traffic trends, which is something that we at Blis keep a close eye on. I know that you've spoken about how important it is in understanding where everyone is on their personal journey. What are some things that you've done in terms of keeping tabs on these sort of fast changing trends? For example, sort of the gradual return to office, people working out at home more, and how are you kind of recalibrating sort of your media accordingly?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, maybe we haven't hit stasis yet. I think there's lots of different variables sort of impacting certainly our behavior in back to gym. New York City has just mandated for both restaurants and the fitness industry that people that are working in the gym as well as working out in the gym are vaccinated. So we're certainly seeing people beginning to feel more comfortable coming back to the gym for those, that wanted to ensure that those around them were also vaccinated. So we're seeing changes in behavior. We're also encouraging in the communities that we were in. We partnered with New York City with the health department to help the mobile vax units by having them outside of our gyms. So, awesome. For us, part of what we do, being, we're a national brand, but we're also a local brand. People that, work out in our gym. Sorry, my dog's barking in the background. She has something to say too, apparently. That we have a local impact, people within 3 to 5 miles of our gyms. That's our neighborhood. So our communities are really an important part of our story, and supporting the communities where we work and where we operate. So in the spirit of your question, though, in just thinking about that inflection point of change from, closing to reopening, we are constantly sort of looking at our media and where it makes the most sense. Organic, obviously, during the pandemic, just because we weren't in acquisition mode, but we were doing some, some sponsorship work in social just to see what the impact was for building awareness during that time period. And now it's really about, to our current member base, ensuring that they feel comfortable coming back into the gym, that they're aware of all the protocols that have been set up, and then just really understanding each individual and where they are in their journey. And part of that is obviously through the app, as more and more of our member base downloads the app, we have a stronger sense of sort of where that stasis will be between marrying your sort of in gym experience with your out of gym experience. So I think that's part of the journey too, as well, that we're trying to understand.
So taking kind of an omni-channel approach to
Yeah,
make
it's
sure
really, yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because my career sort of in the last 15 years really has been about in contemporary fashion as well as specialty retail. It was strongly focused on this omni-channel, no matter, at the time it was she, no matter where she was, ensuring that she had a seamless experience of the brand and a shopping experience as well. So it's definitely come in handy as we begin to sort of recalibrate for that, whatever the new normal might be for the brand. But I don't think we're at stasis yet. I think certainly because companies are still adjusting to when back to work is, what that hybrid might look like, or and that obviously impacts foot traffic on our gyms.
Yeah, for sure, With it, as this progresses, the pandemic, it's constantly evolving. So I think that's a great tactic to make sure that you're kind of mirroring what your members are looking to do. You mentioned your how important the brand is. Let's speak a little bit about the brand messaging. One of the things that struck me as really cool is that Blink features its members in its advertising versus paid, chiseled actors or models. How important is authenticity in your brand messaging?
Yeah, it's really the ethos of our brand. I think, we were disruptive before it was even, in to be disruptive. And really our whole message is mood over muscle, right? We're focusing on sort of two areas. It is like the mind, body, and, and really how you feel. We certainly see, since the coming, or, this journey out of the pandemic, we certainly see that people are, from a physical perspective, much more concerned about their wellness and ensuring that, they have the strength and fortitude. And, Keith touched on that return to the gym, or how important physical fitness has become. But I think there's another place to sort of double click on, and that's really the mental space, right? And what we've always focused on as a brand, that it's also how it makes you feel, right? Like the physical engagement, there's also a net result on what you're doing. And I think a lot of the stories that we will be focused on in the fall is really this idea that came out in a New York Times article, and it's this unshakable blah feeling we have right now. I think the term that, the professional field is calling it is this idea of languishing. Apparently it's the dominant emotion of 2021, and really like the third leg of, in the spirit of mental wellness, depression and languishing is sort of another aspect of it. And so I think what we really realize is how important that physical fitness can be, that when you're languishing, you sort of have that absence of feeling good, right? Like the transition, I guess, from summer into fall, but also this period of sort of not knowing if you're going back to the office. If you are going back to the office, there's lots of different variables that are at change. So we really realized, and it sort of was underlined by this recent study that was done at Harvard, the School of Public Health found that running for 15 minutes a day, or even walking for an hour, reduces the risk of major depression by 26%. So, it's something that we've always known, that we've spoken about, on the regular in all of our campaigns, is really that, the mental wellness of how physical exercise can make you feel. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a positive from the pandemic, right? Is that there's increased attention and about mental health awareness, and I love that mood versus muscle, right? Because it's body, mind, and spirit, not just body, right? In terms
yeah. And for sure, you see it in the stories that we focus on. Both, a lot of the messaging that you see on the channels is really telling those stories. The UGC content, we focus on it a lot, and telling people's story, and how this journey of wellness has really changed their life, whether it's impacted their family or their job, or just their sheer like feeling good repercussions. We really tell those stories over and over again on our social channels, and not just our campaigns.
Yeah, that's so important, right? Is to build that kind of crowd swell among your members, and share kind of the common the common challenges that everybody's facing.
Yeah, because Keith sort of alluded to it, but there is that intimidation that you feel when you're kind of going back to the gym, and the feeling that you get when you walk into a Blink is really that this is like a safe space and a place where you can really feel good. There's an energy that exists among the employees and the members that are in there that it's a place that feels really good, and where you don't need to feel intimidated.
That's great. That's great. So as people are going back to the gym, obviously to varying levels based on restrictions, and kind of navigating this sort of new normal, how does digital now play a continued role in overall fitness? Kind of, so we talked about the pivot from pre-pandemic to pandemic. As we move towards at some point post-pandemic, what role, or I guess maybe what increased role does digital play specifically for Blink?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Digital, so since I've been at the brand, it's just coming up just over 2 years. The real focus is on, can we be much more efficient and effective by focusing on digital? And we did, we ran a lot of tests between that and traditional media and targeting that way. And what we really realized is that, that you can have a really strong impact through digital, both at top of funnel, and obviously a big part of subscription is that direct response. So you definitely see us focused in this area, and certainly there's definitely minefields ahead, certainly with what's happening with iOS and Apple and Facebook and attribution opting out versus opting in versus opting out has had a significant impact in just how we're thinking about and looking at the business. But in the spirit of sort of where we started with that idea of the personalization of the journey, we're really trying to also understand who our target audience is, and the most efficient and effective way of reaching them, certainly through digital, has become a big part of where we're focused.
And as things are opening back up, I assume you're going to maintain sort of the at-home content production at your current pace?
Yeah, so the app and all the content is still available. We are actually not producing our own classes right now, but we definitely continue to sort of watch the space and figure out what does that look like. There's so many variables floating around. We're still trying to stay on top of it.
And then looking forward, what's next for Blink Fitness as we begin to emerge from the pandemic in terms of, marketing strategy and just overall partnerships that you're currently doing. What's kind of, and again, nobody has a crystal ball, and certainly we've learned during the pandemic is planning, 6 months, let alone 1 month ahead is tough sometimes, right?
Yeah.
What does the future hold? What are you kind of looking out at in the next month or two?
Yeah. So, we touched on this and you sort of asked me that question just a minute ago. Content strategy is still a very big part of how we engage with our current customer base as well as new customers. So I think identifying for our current member base, how they want to get content from us, and even through the social channels, we've taken a lot of that workout sort of instruction that we did throughout the pandemic, and now we're creating sort of snackable workouts so that people, that are following us on Instagram or Facebook actually have access, on the weekly on new sort of workout recommendations, but in a fun social way that we've focused on. So content strategy from the overarching story right down to that snackable content on social is a big part of where we're focused, blog, etc. I think as we expand, because we are going to continue to open new gyms across the United States, I think awareness is a really big part, and how can we do that efficiently and effectively, right? Like that's also one of the benefits of digital. So how do you build that sort of top of funnel, that overarching brand story, but at the same time, very much like the service that you offer, how can we get at the local level and begin to really attract those markets as we move into the market? So I think understanding sort of the relationship between those two is really an important part, because at the end of the day, we are a local business. We impact the communities where we are, and we know that people that come to the gym or are interested in working out are very close to the location of where we are.
And by the way, if anybody wants to begin asking some questions, I think there's a Q&A box, so we can take some of those as we kind of approach the time limit here. One thing I want to ask you about is going from kind of a fashion background to fitness. What have you kind of what have you been able to take over from the fashion world to the fitness world? What learnings, what experiences? Because certainly there is definitely a fashion element to fitness, right? So interesting what you've been able to transcribe over from your previous roles to this role.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part is customer centricity, right? And understanding, I spoke a lot about she because it was primarily female fashion that I was focused on, but where is she in her journey, and understanding where she is and really having that conversation with her. A lot of that has taken over, but I think you had touched on this a little bit earlier. It's this idea of omni-channel, right? Like the relationship between the offline and online world have become more important than ever. And, I think that if anything, the pandemic has really accelerated our exploration into digital, and what does that mean for our brand and our business going forward. So I think those are some big takeaways. And I think also the marrying sort of, of the physical attributes and the confidence that you feel in your physicality, but how important the mood is over anything. And you feel that both in fashion and certainly with the, after you work out, how good you feel as well.
Yeah, very true. Very true. A couple questions coming in. What are some tools you use to explore and define your customer's journey?
Yeah, so a lot of that is data and analysis that we do actually from sort of homegrown. A lot of the work that we do is really looking at those journeys in both how they come to the brand, and then once they're in the brand, we really delve in now into the app and app behavior. So we have a sense of, when they're going to the gym and then when they're using it. So a lot of it is really revolving around the app as of right now.
And when you say revolving around the app, so really looking at time, place, engagement.
Yeah, because yeah, well, all of it, when they enter the gym, they're using their app. They're also using the app. So the interesting thing is, originally when the app launched, it was really your partner for in the gym, right? Like it was your workout partner, or you could potentially use it both in the gym and outside of the gym. So we're just, we're looking at how people are using it. A lot of people are back to using the app as a vehicle while they're in the gym, in addition to using it outside the gym. So just getting a sense of both check-in behavior as well as what they're doing and content-wise on the app.
Gotcha. Well, I think we're at our time limit. I think you guys are doing some great stuff, and I really appreciate and like the authenticity, the approach, the omni-channel strategy, because again, fitness has changed indefinitely, right? Pre and now kind of this new normal. One last question. What are your predictions for your industry moving into 2022?
Oh, I don't do predictions, but what I'm hoping for and really what we're seeing is, this real big interest back into feeling good, right? And whatever that means for the individual, I think that, is sort of the silver lining coming out of the pandemic, is this renewed interest in both mental wellness and physical wellness, and where the two shall meet. I think that is something really wonderful and, positive that came out of this whole period of time. So is really watching that influx, and hopefully that means that more people are going to be participating in the fitness industry and either beginning their journeys or restarting their journeys. That's really what we're keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and if anything, I think too, people are much more open to other forms of fitness, right? Whether it's, again, the mental health aspects, the meditation, the yoga, right?
Yeah.
And really looking behind just going in there and doing a class or pumping some iron.
Yeah.
And we're all cooped up in our houses, my God, right? Like even going for a walk, right? And just doing something, I think, is so important. Another question, has the crisis forced modifications to your sort of your goals, short, mid, long-term goals, based on how you measure success and changes in consumer behavior? So in terms of when you're looking at, I guess, measuring your KPI in terms of tracking performance, has the crisis shortened that time frame, or has it stayed sort of kind of fluid?
I think it stayed fluid. I really do. I think if anything, it's funny, we sort of talked about this before we had this conversation here live, is this whole idea used to talk about 3-year plans, 5-year plans, and now it feels like, we're sort of in the moment or planning for tomorrow. So we really, really are staying very focused on those KPIs on the regular, much probably more tapped into them than we ever have been, because we're seeing shifts in behavior that are sometimes being driven by outside forces. For instance, an example is the mandate in New York City and the requirement around vaccination for restaurants and fitness. Those sort of inflection points of change have just caused us to just constantly reassess. And I think something too is just constantly be in touch with our consumer base. Like now more than ever, we're having, regular conversations with our consumers, whether it's survey or other vehicles, but it's really become really important to really understand where they are.
Another question came through. Any trends on content consumption that you've seen during the pandemic that you think will stay?
Yeah, I think this idea of snackable content has really, really, we've seen it really come to light, right? Like it used to be, it would take 15 minutes or an hour to watch, a workout experience. And, we're creating these short snackable sort of directive about different ways to work out. And people are really either sharing them or saving them or both. And we're seeing really high engagement with that kind of content. So we continue, obviously, each channel, we spend a lot of time focused on each particular channel, because behavior on TikTok is very different than, Facebook or Instagram. So we're very cognizant of what we post and when we post it on those channels. But across the board, we're definitely seeing a higher interest in snackable content.
So I think we're almost at time, but we got one more question. It feels like every day there's a new app, a new device that marketers need to pay attention to. How do you make sense of all that fragmentation and evaluate and determine what channels best meet your needs in terms of engaging your customers, your consumers?
Yeah, I think, I think that's true. I spend a lot of time sort of offline and reading newsletters and sort of talking to people. But I also rely on partners like you, Gil. Like there are people that support our marketing tech stack to also help guide us through this time period. I just think there is like this question, infers or directly asked. There's just so much out there. How do you manage it all? So I think those two areas are really important. One, the privacy and staying on top of that. And I definitely lean in to my partners in my marketing tech stack for direction around that. And the second is sort of the future, I guess, and where things are going and what do I need to pay attention to, whether it's, VR or whatever might be next.
CTV, you name it, right?
Yeah. I think there's like the near future and then there's a little bit further
right.
out.
That's right. Well, I think we're at time. So
they haven't interrupted us yet, so we're doing okay.
Okay, so we'll
No,
we can keep going.
We'll just keep going till they get rid of us.
Yeah. The privacy first approach, I think, is an important one. I mean,
yeah.
You want to, one of the things about being London based that it kind of has worked to our advantage in hindsight is being GDPR compliant way back in 2018. And now CCPA and CDPA, which is Virginia's law, CCPA, California's law. And essentially you could have every state with their own privacy laws. Hopefully, there'll be some kind of a national law that comes in, or else you could have 50 different privacy laws. is really, it's important to just make sure you give consumers, you give members control over when, how, and where their data is shared, right? And I think that's something that our industry right now is going through a very disruptive period right now with the iOS changes. It was 14.5. I think we're already 15 plus. And then also the cookies eventually, kind of being reduced, whether it's Mozilla right now and Safari, and then you've got Chrome on the horizon, right? So definitely things to take advantage of. But it's been a pleasure chatting with you, Michelle.
And you too, Gil. Thank you.
And thank you again, Keith, and Brand Innovators for giving us the opportunity to chat.
Definitely. Thank you both.
Yeah, you bet, Michelle. Gil, fascinating kickoff chat. Michelle, Blink Fitness adopting the app first, strategy, and then, leveraging that as gym members return, including me. And then, I found also really insightful and frankly fascinating that, your partnership with first responders and supporting communities where you have such a strong and important presence as part of the social fabric and the members' physical and mental